Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. On the podcast, I seek out and interview entrepreneurs, leading business people, authors, tech leaders, academics, and generally cool people doing interesting stuff in the service and experience space. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Micah Peterson of Procedure Flow. Hey, Micah, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Adrian. How you doing?
Now, you are the VP of Product Management across at Procedure Flow, and that probably can speak volumes for some people in the know. But for people who are not quite so much in the know, can you give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch on Micah and the work that you do?
Yeah. I guess in a nutshell career is I started out in tech support, and I got to do the whole on the phone with customers, go through training, deer in the headlights when I didn't know how to help a customer. I actually experienced some knowledge base issues where problems were already solved, but it wasn't documented. And so I was redoing work that other people had already figured out. That got me really intrigued in knowledge management and knowledge sharing. And I started my own knowledge-based company. I hit the wall on search. There's some challenges that are not solved on search and page ranking behind your firewall yet. And in that journey of entrepreneurism, I landed in an R&D department at a BPO where I had the opportunity to work on Procedure Flow and take it from a desktop tool to the cloud. We rolled that out into a separate company in 2015, and I've been doing that ever since. So it's been a really fun. Procedure Flow answers a lot of questions that knowledge management has failed to solve, and so it's been sort of a joy for me to accidentally sort of fall into something that's quite successful and helps agents and the buyers, and it's been really fun.
Awesome. Now, in the setup of this podcast, we had a really great conversation about, customer service agents and reps, and particularly around, as you say, kind of knowledge management and training. And you said a couple of things that really stood out for me is because they were, let's say, slightly provocative and also counterintuitive. So I wanted to invite you onto the podcast so we can discuss them, have a poke around them and talk them through, if that's all right. And so the first thing you said related to delusions and a couple of delusions that you said exist in the service space, particularly at the VP level. So you're kind of poking at some pretty high ups, as it were. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, can you tell me about these delusions? So what they cost us and also what we should be thinking about instead.
Yeah, no, that's, you're right. So coming into the contact center industry, I started going to trade shows right away, like CCW in Vegas and, some of the really big ones. And I didn't have a sandwich board per se, but we didn't have a booth. And so I would just run around and shake everybody's hand. And my goal was to meet everybody there. When I would talk to directors, there would be this understanding that there were some challenges around training and also around, how long is the agent going to be with us? When I would talk to the VP level, though, there was really what I felt like a delusion around, I'd say, what's your goals for the next 2 years? What are you shopping for? What do you have budget for? And they would tell me things like, we're going omni-channel, we're going to put in chat, we're switching out our CRM system, or just kind of stuff like this. But to me, being, boots on the ground with a knowledge management software, what was very clear to me immediately was that people don't want to work in a contact center their whole life necessarily. There's obviously exceptions. There's some people that enjoy the work and they will continue on, and the pay is good enough, or, it's unionized or what have you. But by and large, I don't think anybody would disagree with me that, past the 12-month mark, something happens. There's three outcomes, really. They get promoted within the company if they're really good. It's like a harvest ground. They are saving up for college because there's something else they'd like to do. Or they get managed out of the company because they're not great at it or they're not engaging with the work. And so, again, a few exceptions, but by and large, that's the path. And so you have this 12-month, where they engage with it, but it takes like 4 weeks, 6 weeks of training, a couple of weeks of nesting. They hit the phones. They have to take hundreds of different kinds of calls. There's scenarios and exceptions. They put the customers on hold. They go inside and ask questions. They transfer people unnecessarily. They give them the wrong answer, which can be disastrous, or they just don't handle the call properly, lose control. There's all kinds of challenges there. And so what was just blazingly obvious to me as a delusion was you had VP level people walking around thinking that they needed to introduce another channel when they have people that have no experience, or subject matter expertise on the phone with your customers in very emotional conversations, that could result in that person not being a customer anymore. And you haven't helped that person adjust to that work very quickly. And so that was one of the delusions for sure.
I mean, so because it makes me think about, so is that a problem of just operations and how we see it? Or is it also kind of a problem with how we portray service? You talk about that sort of thing. It's a transitional or transitory sort of transient sort of like space.
That's right.
And I know that it changes across different geographies. Some places it's very much seen as being a decent aspirational kind of role because they look after people, they reward them well, and it's valued in terms of its role in the company. But in other places, it's sort of looked down upon.
Or it's a cost center. That would be inarguable. As a consumer, you would know certain industries that you call into and try to get help. If you're on the phone for 30 minutes and the wait time lady is saying, "You're a valued customer, please keep waiting for another 15 minutes. You already know that from a cost center perspective, they're not providing the right level of staffing that will get you a quick turnaround on your issues. So, there is that reality that it's a big cost center.
So it feels to me kind of picking it out from there. There's two different strands. So it's like there's a delusion around being prepared and chucking people into the fray.
That's right.
Kind of when they're not necessarily kind of well equipped. And then there's also this one around everybody seems to be managing turnover.
Yeah.
And actually there's a reality kind of in that. So I guess my question would be to try and burst those delusional bubbles, as it were. What sort of things should we be doing instead?
Yeah. So if I was to categorize the two buckets of delusion, the first one we talked about at length, which is you have a very short window of time with them, and how do you make them an expert quickly so that the customers are handled well? The second delusion is this delusion of preparedness. It's a delusion that you've done a good job training, that your training program is adequate. And the reason that I believe it's a delusion, certainly at a VP level, because they're not necessarily boots on the ground, is that when you come out of the training classroom, there's an expectation that you've memorized a lot of material through a combination of lecture style and practice and whatnot. But the reality is when you hit the floor, you don't actually know what you're doing. And there's scenarios and exceptions that you haven't accounted for in training. And so they really hit the floor and stumble. And when we finish quote unquote training, there's actually another 3 to 4 months of proficiency where the average handle time and the quality need to come down to where a subject matter expert is operating at. And that multi-month gap is where all of the challenges are going to happen with customers. And so then, the question there is, how do you insulate yourself from attrition and simultaneously get brand new people joining your center to operate as experts? And it has everything to do with digital knowledge management and how you share knowledge. And is that an effective program today?
Yeah.
Are you putting a playbook? We mused, I think, a little bit in an earlier conversation about, you would never send people to battle without a battle plan. You would not put people on a football line, an American football line with, no play. We're going to throw it. We're going to run it. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. And yet we throw agents out onto the phone with not much of a playbook, if anything, from a real-time performance perspective. So.
But I think it's also it makes me think about this idea. You talk about American football and plays and stuff. The reason why people that practice those plays is because you can also simulate what's going to happen in response to the play, as it were, in inverted commas. Right. Because invariably the play doesn't always going to go as planned.
That's
and it's
right.
how you respond to things is the thing. And the word respond, I think, is an important one, because it's a bit like, if you think about emergency services, whether it's fire or ambulance or kind of police or whatever, I think in large part, people talk about response times rather than reaction times. And I learned this a long time ago, and I thought it's a really kind of good way of looking at it. And the reason why they do that is because when you react, it becomes this visceral, intuitive kind of just something happens and you think about it. But actually, when you respond to time, when you talk about response times, what it talks about is, what it means is that you have trained so hard in doing this, that when you're faced with a scenario or a variety of different scenarios, you know exactly what to do and how to do it and how to deal with the variety and the complexity that often kind of presents you when you can go through the different sort of stages.
That's right.
All with the view of, particularly in emergency services, about, preserving life or saving lives. And so I think it's a useful way of thinking about it. It's like, actually what we're doing is we end up preparing people to react rather than to respond. Yeah.
Yep. And the playbook has to not just, be the rule of thumb. It has to not just be the surface level greetings, verifications, disposition. It has to have the guts. It has to understand what probing questions to ask, what scenarios and exceptions you need to be able to handle, and how to do that explicitly. And so if that playbook is not there, or if it's not good or it's not consumable, then you're going to have all the challenges of hold time, transfers, unhappy customers, bad CSAT, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. So then, if I go on to the next thing of my list of things that you can said to me, was this, which is slightly, I guess, from in common parlance, was that it was definitely a counterintuitive one, where you kind of said followed procedures reduce average handle time.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like, okay, let's have a go at that one. Tell me what you mean.
Absolutely. So this just comes through observation, through the work I've done with procedure flow, where we'll sit sometimes in a live center you can see the room where they're training people, and they've just left that room, maybe 10 weeks in the training classroom, and they're brand new on the floor. So they've been there for a week or two. And it's kind of what we call nesting. If you imagine a bird, taking care of little ones in the nest. So there's that helping, the extra help that's going on. So they're raising their hand or raising a flag. People are coming over, they're on mute, and they're getting extra help. And so in that environment, you'll see a lot of chaos, around losing control of the call. And so what happens as an objective observer, one of the ones that I watched was really interesting. It was for a bank, and the person called in and they said, I'm having trouble printing off a summary of my bank account. And that was the intention. You have to figure out the intention to procedure. And so the agent proceeded to say, well, can you get to a computer? No. Do you have access to it on your phone? No. Do you have the internet at all? No. And then can you go to a branch? It's 2 hours away,
Right.
And so then he puts him on hold. He goes inside, he asks all his friends for help. And one of his friends yells out, and this will stick with me forever. His friend yells out, branch them. To which I then discovered was the language of, they need to go physically to a branch to get what they want. And in this guy's case, it's 2 hours away. And so he gets back on the phone, tells me I have to go to branch. The customer goes, ballistic. And we're now 15 minutes into this call, right? And the customer starts, as he's spewing, he says, look, I'm just trying to buy a used car and I need a bank thing to present to them. They need me to fax it to this number. And the agent goes, oh, you want to fax it somewhere? I can do that for you. So this is after 15 minutes, on the call. You've got an angry customer, and it's just been this weird handling of the call. And I thought to myself immediately, I was like, in procedure flow, you would have, part of your probing questions would be like, what do you need to do with this? Like, what's the purpose of what you're trying to do? And the person would say, oh, I'm trying to buy a used car. And oh, that's so exciting. What kind of car are you going to buy? And you just need to fax that to them. Okay, of course, I can fax that for you. And that's a 3-minute call versus a 15-minute call. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the outcomes are much better. And so that's what I meant by that statement, is that when they're armed with the playbook that has the probing questions and all of the right things to do and the congratulatory or the empathy built into it, then that experience is so much better and so much shorter.
Well, I guess it's also kind of the thing around equipping people with the time and the skills and if like the support to be able to focus on the conversation rather than just the procedure.
That's right.
So it's like you focus on the customer and what the customer is trying to do rather than just being tied to, I must do step 1 and step 2 and then step 3.
Yes.
Because that's going to take you down a whole dead end rabbit hole. You
can only, in the training, if you're talking about 100, 200 different kinds of inbound calls, you can only give them so much summary structure of there's 10 steps to the call. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is different kinds of calls are going to go in different directions and have different types of handling and probing questions, and they're not all the same. And so that is part of that second delusion bucket of, you think they're prepared, but you haven't given them the playbook.
Awesome. So the next up was this one, which I know is a bit sensitive and could possibly get you into a heap of trouble.
Maybe, yeah.
A headline in the New York Times, Micah Peterson says, X.
Uh-oh.
But this is a health warning on this one, because you said customer service is a dumpster. Customer service is you can tell I'm from the UK because we don't say dumpster.
Yeah, sure. Rubbish.
I'm saying like dumpstar. Is that customer service is the dumpster fire of the company. Now, as I say, I know this is a sensitive one, but I do love it. And I wanted to ask you if you can explain what you mean with the kind of the I know that you're going to give us some health kind of warnings and caveats and stuff here, but explain what you mean and what your thinking was here.
Yeah. So if we think about the department and the people that are doing this amazing work to try to help customers, if we kind of put that aside and we look at the structure of the company organizationally on a chart, when you think about when problems happen within a company, where are all those problems going to go? And so if you do think of this, the marketing group does a campaign, but they didn't check with another department. Mm-hmm. And now there's confusion with the customers about, they thought they were going to get this discount, but we don't actually do it anymore. Or that was last month. So that's a challenge. Product introduces a new version or a new product feature and things weren't communicated quite clearly. There's a bug. Now that's, the customer's going to call in about that. There's mergers and acquisitions. There's changes in systems. There's, that my delivery didn't arrive on time. A third party didn't come through as part of that delivery network, or, what have you. So there's an infinite number of challenges that an organization will have as it scales and grows for its customer base. And so when something goes wrong, what does the customer do? Well, it's on the back of the credit card. It says, call this number, right? And so they're calling in with their problems about your organization that could have come from any number of, volatile places in the company. And so if you think of that, all of the challenges being piled up as a dumpster fire and then lighting it on fire, really, and it's burning, that means that there are customers that are upset and they want resolution to their issues, or they've been wronged, or what have you, confusion. So that's what I meant by it. And it's also one of those overlooked realities of customer service, is that it isn't this cute little place where people call in with little tidbitty things. I have a little FAQ question. Oftentimes they're calling in because they have been wronged in some way. And that could be like an unauthorized charge on their card. That could be someone stolen their credit card. It could be, that they have really important questions about health and they need the right answer, or they need guidance. And you know what I mean, in terms of how emotional. And we work really well across 4 industries of strength, which is every human needs a telephone, electricity, they have health stuff, and a bank. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you think about, those are really kind of the four things that consumer humans need to live. Those are the things you're going to get the most emotional about: money, electricity, your health,
Yeah.
your family's health, and communication devices, which are now at a critical level. And so there's no way that those aren't going to be emotional calls.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I can see kind of that, and sometimes kind of people don't know. You take that analogy of this, of the just dumpster fire, and sometimes people don't, in other parts of the organization, don't always understand that there's a fire going on.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed that is that often, yes, I would say that most people care about the service and the experience that customers can get, but they don't necessarily always realize the externalities that happen, kind of like based on some of the work that they do, or the disconnects and here and there.
Yeah.
And therefore they don't really understand the scope and the breadth of the work that people in service and support and contact centers do.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
that's often not their fault. Sometimes that is the fault of just the way the organization is structured, where the service and support is located, but also it's also the fault, I think, and it's something I've talked about before. It's also the fault of people that work in and lead service, support, help functions.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they do an important job, but they also need to bang their own drum. And I remember working with one client where that was the case. Everybody acknowledged that the service team were doing a great job, but they didn't really understand kind of what they did. Yeah. And so we said, well, why don't we try and change that? Why don't we try and change? We'll send around like an email newsletter, just a very simple one, to like everybody on a monthly basis, and just say, here's the highlights of our month. This is the number of calls that we took, number of emails we answered, number of chats, number of this, number of that. This is what people were talking about. This is the things that we worked on. This is how we're developing. Here's some snapshots of all the things that customers are saying to us, like some verbatims and stuff, good and not so good, and all these different sort of trends. And it's just not rocket science. They just did this. But oh my word, the reaction to it was tremendous.
Yeah.
Because people were like, wow, oh my God, you do that? And oh my crumbs, and wow, thank you for that insight. And you do some incredible work. And the thing that happened on that, despite beyond all the congratulations and everything else and the kind of plaudits, was that people started asking for their input. People started inviting them to kind of to meetings. People started inviting them to get involved in kind of projects and having a say in kind of what's going on, because people could then see the value of the work that they did.
Yeah, if you think about it, Adrian, like it's a consistent interface with live customers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that I really don't like the idea that it is a cost center, even though I know the reality of the expense of it. But it is like, you have people talking to your customers every day, thousands and thousands of calls and texts and chats, and it's like, what are you talking? What are they talking about? What are they saying? Right. Mm-hmm. And it's really still to this day, there's a lot of more speech analytics and voice of the customer software that's available, and that is progressing. But it's a fascinating, largely untapped, hearing what the customer is saying and what's happening with them and what your product means to them, et cetera. And yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. And so I think the thing is like, I've always advocated for people to be their own newspaper, tell their own story, because actually people have a vested interest in understanding kind of what it is you do and what you're hearing. And so there should be a very receptive audience. And in my experience, and the work that I've done with a couple of clients where I've advocated them doing this, the results have been like transformative in terms of how they're viewed around the organization and the respect that they get. Because I think you're absolutely right. It's like there's a reality that's dumpster fire is kind of slightly polemical, and it's kind of like not necessarily very helpful. And it doesn't really reflect reality. But it is a dumping ground for many of the problems that need to get fixed.
That's right.
and giving people sight of those kind of problems and how they're getting fixed and how they can be avoided in future is an essential part of that internal sort of conversation loop
yeah,
kind of within a company.
Yeah.
And so one final thing that you listed out to me, which I thought was interesting because it's right to your area of focus, which is knowledge-based knowledge management. And you told me that text-based knowledge bases have a 3-year cycle of clean, pure articles to complete dysfunction.
That's right.
And I thought, okay, so tell me what's going on here and how that might sort of affect sort of agent morale and kind of use and what firms should be doing differently about that.
Yeah. And so I think when we talked about it previously, what had spawned it was the idea around the morale of agents and how that can be low. And I've heard things when I'm in live, in a call center that they'll say things like, I don't need this. I could work in a coffee shop in Canada. It might be Tim Hortons, for us. And I could make the same amount of money and people will at least say thank you. So there's a sentiment that's being expressed there that the value of their work is not being valued. And so they're getting yelled at by the customer for company problems. They're getting their knuckles rapped by a quality assurance person, maybe in a nice way, but still, you're still getting your knuckles rapped. Their team leads on them about changes and different things that are going on. And it's just a lot of high stress. And if you go back to that idea that we haven't armed them with a playbook. So often what's pointed to is like, it's in the knowledge base, go find it in the knowledge base. And when you think about that situation, well, what is that thing, right? So this 3-year expiry date thing is you start with a fresh one, you put like 100 articles in it. And so it's pretty easy to find stuff and the information is up to date and accurate. Everybody's okay. Okay, great. There's 100. I can find what I need. And then the company starts changing. There's volatility in the company, as we talked about previously. So now we add new articles. Somebody's maybe a little bit moving too fast. And instead of updating an older article, they write a new one. So now we've got duplication and one of them is falling slowly out of date. So you've got same information in two places in different contexts. And then you've got incorrect information, you've got incomplete information, and over a 3-year period, no one can manage it. And no one's really paid to. It's not really given the time or the money or the focus. And even in really large companies, what we've seen is while they may have a few full-time people dedicated to it, it's still not enough people. There's not enough resourcing going into knowledge management. And so that is the function of that decline is that when you write stuff as a paragraph of text, it's very difficult to consume. It's very hard to read. It's hard to find. And then the duplication and being out of date. And so you break trust. Like no one trusts that they're going to find what they're looking for or be able to consume it or that it's even correct. And then people stop using it. And so that is the challenge of a traditional text-based, what we call a wall of text knowledge base. It's a very slapdash attempt at writing down subject matter expertise, and it's not built with the end user in mind.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, so you present them with an article and the article could be pages and pages long, but that's kind of while they consume that article, the customer is possibly still waiting on the phone, waiting for them to get to the end of the, of the article and then to figure out, okay, what is the answer to that? What was that question again? And what do I need to answer?
And the reality is the water travels the path of least resistance. And so when they hit a wall of text, where is the water going to go? They're going to go to their neighbor. They're going to go into a Slack or Teams channel. They're going to distract a bunch of people. They're going to put a customer on hold. They're going to transfer. They're going to just give the wrong answer because they don't have time. They're on a crunch. And so their water will go in a lot of different directions that are not optimal for sure.
So that kind of finishes the list of I guess, delusions, dumpster fires, and dysfunction.
Yeah,
and
the punk things that Micah wanted to say.
Yeah. So, Micah, give us a bit of hope after all of that. I mean, and give me some examples, if you can, give me some examples of firms that you have worked with that that sort of embody the approach that you would advocate for. And I'm particularly interested in how they've done that and how they've improved outcomes and what they've achieved and how long it's taken them to achieve them. Because it's just like, yeah, tell us a couple of stories if you can.
Yeah. So procedure flow provides visual knowledge, and we can talk a little bit more about that later, but it is really a significant change in the representation of information that makes it much more consumable in real time. And by doing that, we've been able to have a tremendous amount of success with helping our customers to break through that wall of text challenge and actually make the knowledge base usable. And then we've fixed the out-of-date challenges through the same mechanism with a little bit of crowdsourcing tech added in there, and we can chat through that. But the results that we've been able to get have been very exciting. It's one of the things that really gets me up in the morning is knowing that there are these special days when we launch into centers and in training environments, and I love going in. So I'm going to tell you 2 stories from my early journeys, and I'm going to tell you 2 fresh stories quickly. My first journey story is our first paying customer. We had a very large, basically like a hotel and resorts company, and they were doing some back office work. So it wasn't on the phone, but they would take this week to do some up training with folks. And then after that, they would have during there'd be 2 subject matter experts going around there with a trainer. They go out, they have all kinds of extra help, and hopefully they didn't make big quality mistakes as they were doing that work. They introduced procedure flow, and they were able to do like a 1-hour orientation to what is procedure flow. And then they would give them live access to the systems, and the trainer would sit at the front of the class and they'd start doing live work. And occasionally they'd have a question for the trainer, but essentially they were doing live work before lunchtime on the first day. And I sat there in the room and I was just like, this is incredible. Like this is amazing to go from lecture style memorization, just a lot of talking and screenshots and slides to just doing the work. Mm-hmm. My second one story is a health insurance payer company that there was agents that had 2 years experience, and they were taking calls about special drug authorization, and they would get nervous because the customer really wants this drug for whatever reason they need it for. And there's this process that has to be done internally. So the customer would get pushy with them, and they would say, well, let me check internally and I'll see what I can do. So they go back internally. And of course, the answer would come back, we're not ready yet. You gotta push them off. And so we gave them procedure flow. It had really explicit, you've got to look at the date. And if it's 14 days, then you got to say to the customer, no, you need to give us 14 days. And then there was even a section in there that said, if they get hot, here's how our best agent responds to calm them down. And you've got that there for you as well. And we talked a little bit about that earlier, about the layers deeper of how do you handle when they start kicking back. We called them kickbacks. And so I was in there one day and this guy pulls me aside and he goes, I've been doing this for 2 years. And he said, I hated these special drug auth calls, and now I just do them no problem. When we got the stats back, we were cutting escalations down by over 50% for those special drug authorization calls. And so you imagine somebody has 2 years experience doing this work, and all of a sudden now they feel free to execute the process without any extra help and give the customers, the answer that they need, whether they like it or not, the real answer that they need.
And if you add up those kind of pick a number for an average rate of escalations and then kind of cut it in half and then, annualize it over kind of like 2 years,
it's huge.
That's a significant number of,
and the CSAT impact. So I wanted to talk to you about that too. So we had a big box retailer. The problems they were trying to solve were hold times, errors. They were looking to move away from heavy SharePoint, Lotus Notes, 200-page Word documents. Back office, they had order management issues, and there were some escalation problems. Results, 29 seconds reduction on average off of the hold time. So I'm looking for stuff. I'm trying to shop for answers internally. 30% reduction in escalations. 12-point increase in CSAT on the associate rating, 7-point increase on CSAT for the shop again rating. And for that CSAT improvement, no increase in average handle time, right? Which is sometimes a trade-off that people have to make. And then for procedure flow on a whole, when they rated us for NPS, they gave us that 10 promoter score. You talked about, how quickly can you do this? They had a pilot in November. They were in a buy situation. You got to go through procurement and IT checks and all of that. They were in a buy situation by January. They were essentially rolled out at that point, and then they just did some follow-up mapping and got all their stuff in there by March. So in 3 to 4 months, everything we just talked about, we're not giving them a playbook. We're throwing inexperienced people into the deep end and having really bad customer experiences, fixing all of those challenges in 3 to 4 months and then getting those kinds of results. So, that's really exciting. And then we had a healthcare provider I'll mention as well that reduced their attrition by 12%, which we talked about morale. We talked about I could make the same money doing this somewhere else and at least get a thank you. Now they know what they're doing. They feel more confident. So it has an impact on attrition even. Reduced side-by-side coaching by 44% and total time to proficiency cut by 25%. And that's the 6 months or so of adjustment that we talked about, like collapsing that in, by 25%, measurable exactly to procedure flow, and doing that within a 2 to 3 month window. So anyway, nice. There's good news. There's good news. There are solutions. So
yeah, well, if you could see the video that we're using here, just so Micah and I can see each other while we're talking. I just pulled a face. It was a kind of impressive face. Yeah. Like for some of those numbers, because that's pretty cool. But I wanted to completely kind of like rewind back to something you talked about, just to help me understand how this kind of like works. Because you talked about taking a visual knowledge sort of approach. Mm-hmm. I wanted to help I wondered if you could help me understand kind of what that means, what it looks like, and because rather than just being, I maybe search for something and then it goes, ta-da, here's text-based answer. What does that kind of mean from a agent or rep perspective when you take a more visual approach?
Yeah, 100%. So what is procedure flow? I'm going to give you 2 metaphors, hopefully that will click, for you and your audience, because you kind of need to experience procedure flow. I can tell you it's navigatable, small hyperlink flowcharts, and I can see people's faces just go, like it's not computing. It's the one metaphor is a corn maze. So I hadn't really done one as a kid. My parents were not really into that, but my wife loves adventures. She's actually an influencer on Instagram. And so she's always promoting things to do in New Brunswick here in Eastern Canada. So she wanted to go do the corn maze thing with our kids. So we jump in there and you get in there and we're like, it's crazy. They're tall, like they're, 2 or 3 times your height, the stalks are. And all you can see in front of you is it either goes one way or it goes 2 ways. And you're just like, they make it into a maze, right? And so you have no idea where you're going. Some people just hold their hand on the left-hand wall and they just do the whole thing. Some people just try to intuitively go through it. But you really are totally lost in there. And so it was an interesting adult experience for me. And then, of course, they do hand out like a coloring page map for the kids where there's Easter eggs, but you could use the map to get through. And there's this idea that if you were a bird and you were flying over, or if you've watched like Amazing Race or something where you can bird's eye view over the maze, you can immediately see the path out, right? And then you're looking at the people wandering around. You're going, no, not that direction, this direction, right? And we think back to that banking guy that just wanted to fax the numbers to get the car. And it's like, that's what they need. They need the bird's eye view of these concepts that they need to navigate through. And they need it to be visual. It can't be paragraphs of text. You don't have time to read a book, understand it, interpret it, build your own internal visual. We play this game when we do our pitch deck for sales where we have a description of a circle. And if you ever look up the definition of a circle, it's kind of fascinating how complex it is. A equal point distance from every, whatever. Mm-hmm. And people look at it for 20, 30 seconds and we go, what is it? And they go, I think it's a circle. And you're like, yeah, That's how hard it is to read a paragraph of text and try to, in your mind, conceive of what's happening.
Right.
When you take the extra step to just draw it out for them and then let them in real time go through it. So that's the first thing, is it has to be consumable. And the small hyperlink flowcharts, they give you small bite-sized logical paths that you can drive through. The second thing is the analogy of broken windows. And there is this, I don't know if you've come across it, but there's this, if you've ever seen like a vacant home or gas station, and somebody throws a rock through the window, and then next graffiti, and then just the whole place gets torn apart. Nobody cares about it anymore. And so this idea that as soon as the first window is broken, everyone goes, oh, you can do whatever you want to it and you won't get in trouble, right? And so also maybe another one would be, I got my first car, a Honda Civic, a 1989 Honda Civic, and my dad he used to ask us to clean the station wagon, and I hated it. I hated cleaning the station wagon. And, it would take up half your Saturday. It was just super annoying. When I got my Honda Civic, I cleaned it all the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I loved keeping that thing clean because people were going to come in my car. I wanted it to be really nice. And so there was ownership and pride there, right? So the second problem you have to solve with knowledge sharing and knowledge management is, can you give ownership to the people that are actually using it, right? Can you prevent a broken window situation where one bad article turns into two, turns into hundreds, and actually have the people using it, now that it's visual and they can navigate through it, you can see the problems, but do we also empower them to fix them? The broken link, this one doesn't end correctly. I tried this and it was horrible. Can we adjust it? And so in Procedure Flow, you have the ability to pull drafts at a user, agent, team lead, trainer, quality assurance, whatever level, and participate and own the upkeep of it in a really cool collaboration version control model. And so our product is really those two things together, solving 50% consumability, 50% maintenance, which, if you do your research in knowledge management, those are the two most difficult problems to solve.
And is that the one and the latter one is that's the one that prevents the sort of 3-year cycle of dysfunction sort of thing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can't solve it without the visual component, because as soon as you go back to text, nobody cares about it or uses it anymore. So it's only when people are using it that you actually identify the problems that need to be solved. And then you empower the team to own solving those problems. And so the two have to work hand in hand.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And now I understand why you've got flow in your name.
Yeah. Self-descriptive.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's great, Mike. I mean, and a series of metaphors and analogies and stuff that really kind of like bring something which sometimes can feel a little bit dry, but to life, because it's a real problem for many people. So is there anything else that you'd like to add that we've kind of like missed out before I kind of zoom out and ask you some just broader sort of questions to reflect on?
I don't think so. I think we covered, if you go back to the earlier part of our conversation, what I was hinting at with the playbook is procedure flow from a visual perspective. There may be other ways to do it. We don't have any direct competitors doing what we're doing, and I've not seen it done well in other tools. So if you know of one, let me know. But that is what I was alluding to, was arming your group with a playbook. And I don't like hard selling, but I do love enjoying what our customers get out of our product and how it helps the agent at the end of the day. And that there was one story there where there was in a BPO we rolled out, and there was this funny gal. She was really spunky, and you would probably like to have her on your show. And she had this crazy hair, and the headset was always messing up her hair. Anyway, I wasn't sure what she was going to think of it because she was so outspoken. And at the end, when we did the debrief, she said, this was like staring into the mind of somebody who's been doing this for 10 years. That it was like a privilege to be able to do that. And I thought that always kind of stuck with me. So yeah, that I think I've communicated everything I wanted to. I would add that the reporting data is really interesting when you see people taking turn by turn decisions instead of just how many people read this knowledge base article. That reporting information is quite interesting path data, and you can do a lot with that. So that's probably worth mentioning.
Awesome. So I guess maybe it'd be interesting to sort of reflect, because you've been around since 2015. And so you've had kind of before and kind of like during, and then now a little bit after the pandemic in inverted commas. Yeah. And I guess my question would be, reflecting on that, I mean, has that accelerated or kind of like changed the way that you've kind of like worked, that it's going to, that, and is it going to, does it fundamentally kind of change the way that you approach things or form kind of how you're working these days? Or how have the last kind of few years been for yourselves?
I'll cut it up into two chunks. I'll talk a little bit about what happened with procedure flow, and then I may just mention a couple of things about me personally, how it was for me. But my observation with procedure flow was interesting. There's a quote, I think it's attributable to Warren Buffett. He probably stole it from someone else, but it's an investing quote, but it says, "You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out." It always makes me laugh, because we have the highest tides in the world here in New Brunswick, and they actually, like, within 6 hours, they go out a half a mile. It's quite interesting. And so anyway. So if you had a bad training program, or a training program that was not engaging or really effective, but you were in a classroom environment and there was just enough human respect that, people endured that type of training. When you went to Zoom and you did it remotely, it really didn't work, Mm-hmm. So if you were having challenges that were kind of hidden in live training, they really got exposed for what they were during that transition to remote training. And so we saw procedure flow go from a lower priority from a perception perspective to almost like a number two, like get home, get a cloud telephony solution set up. And then how am I going to train them, support them? What happens to shoulder tapping? Where do they get their assistance and nesting from? And how do I communicate changes? There was a ton of changes during COVID. And so how do you quickly roll out? And we have this really cool side-by-side comparison view and change history updates that you don't have to send emails. It's just really visual. And so our customers really appreciated us. They told us it was invaluable in that quick transition to home that happened within a couple of weeks. And then in the ongoing, as they reimagined, their training, nesting, and onboarding. So that was exciting for us. It continues to be exciting because that model, people are still noodling with it. Are we hybrid? Are we going back to the office? Are we staying at home? And we see everything. People are chosen lots of different paths. Regardless, procedure flow continues to offer the same value, and really, if anything, collapse the training time and the onboarding time, so you get out on the phone quicker and then support them. So, but just it helps from a sales perspective if there's more priority on it. Then personally, I think, I had you can go back and watch a webinar of me doing just like a standard thing like this. And I started crying because a friend of mine got cancer and I could not go be with him. And so I think everybody went through some form of like, we need human connection and we can't have it. And it was a long 2.5 years. So I think what I took away from that was just the importance of human connection. And I still come to the office, and we have 60 people, and there might be at max 10 people in here on any given day. Everybody's figured out how to kind of work from home, but I just really enjoy being with other humans. I like all the little jokes and glances and, things that you wouldn't maybe want caught on record, just that you can use and have fun. And that took a heightened priority for me on all fronts: family, church, work, all that stuff.
Perfect. And so if we were to boil it all down, Micah, to one bit of best advice from you about if somebody wants to listening and wants to improve their customer or their employee experience, and I said, complete this sentence. Micah says, do this, ... How would you complete that sentence?
I'm going to do a little longer than complete the sentence. I went to CCW Vegas just like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you probably arrived in Vegas as I was leaving.
Mm-hmm. And there's 300 booths there, and I went up and down the rows and I identified new ones that I hadn't met yet and just kind of talked to different people. And as I process those categories of what vendors sell into the contact center CX, EX space, or, AX, agent experience, which is really where we live. What strikes me always is the lack of focus on the playbook and scenario-based training. And just this, we're just going to keep doing the same old thing that we've been doing for 30 years. It bothers me. Like, it's like people's unwillingness to innovate on, do we really need to do these PowerPoints? Can we not just set up a simulator? Can we not just have something like a playbook, like procedure flow, where we've taken the time to map out the 200 different calls that we get and just get them emulating taking calls from day one, so that what they're experiencing in onboarding is what they will experience on the phone, versus this paradigm shift of, I'm sitting listening to somebody talk, and now I'm like talking to a customer in his systems world that's totally different than what I imagined it to be. And so you don't hear people talking about that. You don't hear people emphasizing that. You hear speech analytics, you hear survey stuff, you hear all this, and it's like, are you out of your mind? Like, the speech analytics is going to tell you that the call was bad, right? Like, the survey is going to tell you that the agent lacked confidence and wasn't knowledgeable of what I needed, and I got transferred, and your IVR is terrible, and it's just going to tell you stuff that you should already know, and that's fascinating to me. Like, the emphasis that people put in places that to me are not the priority, and the priority should be, how quickly can I get a new person to function like a subject matter expert, so that my customers are having a great experience. And it starts with knowledge and it ends with knowledge. Like, there's just no two ways around it. So, obviously I'm biased, but it seems obvious to me that playbook and scenario-based training, if I was to fill in your sentence, that's where you should put in your energy, your money, and your time.
Well, I'm lucky on on this kind of podcast, because I get to use it as both my R&D and L&D lab, and I get to explore and sort of almost like shine a light on some of these areas. And I'm pleased to say that we're actually kind of not that long ago, I had somebody else on the podcast who was doing that sort of simulation scenario-based kind of training, but they were doing this company called Zenerate.
Okay.
So Brian Chewett was on, and what they were doing there. So it wasn't real-time knowledge in the moment sort of thing, but it was that sort of simulation scenario-based sort of like practicing,
getting the jitters out. Yeah.
And then getting the kind of the real-time kind of coaching, sort of AI enabled. And I thought what they were doing was cool. And I could see the real kind of value. You guys are in a similar sort of space, but doing different sort of things.
Yeah, we do. We cover the initial training piece from day one all the way through to, all the changes get rolled out through our product as well. So we're there for real-time performance support through the journey of the agent. But there is this intense scenario-based training that should be happening on the front end, and products like Zenerate, Bright, SimTrain. There's a bunch of products that are great at, you build a simulator, you have the voice going on, and it's all paused so that you can go, okay, what do I do now? And that's an exciting kind of training that is engaging, that these kids, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, as they come out and approach this work, they're going to want to have fun and engage the learning versus, just sitting and listening to, PowerPoint lectures.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
LMS video.
I think it's a good and interesting and exciting sort of space. It's good to see some new products and developments and the leveraging of new technologies to try and innovate in that space, which points right to the improvement of business outcomes.
That's right.
Which on all sort of facets, customer, employee, and kind of like commercial. So it's great to see. So before we go, a couple of other quick questions. First one, a couple of punk ones related to the books I kind of wrote. So we talked about this before. First question: if I would say to you, give me one or two words that would describe a more punk approach to customer experience, what would you say? Now, I warn you, I've got a list of over 185 of these. So your challenge.
Do I get some kind of a bonus if I put one on the list that's not there yet?
Yeah, you sort of don't. Well, it's like a not bonus that you don't. I don't blow a raspberry at you or something.
Sure. The word I chose was on uncompromising, which obviously there's a lot of probably funner words you could use to describe punks. And I actually really like punk music and I like the vibe. And but when I try to think about how would I also combine, not just being some kind of society, like you're just breaking the rules for the fun of it. In the more genuine sense of a punk, I like the idea that they have conviction and there's something that they're trying to express and they're uncompromising they don't care what people think about the way that they're dressed or, what they're doing. It's just, they're going for it. And so if you have the customer in mind, if you're fighting on behalf of your customer inside of your company to represent them, that uncompromising spirit should be within the department and at an executive level to say, what are we doing to help our customers when we create these problems? And how do we not just answer the phone, but how do we be proactive about it? I recently had a really bad banking experience calling my bank about, I had unauthorized charges on my credit card. And it was a very, very negative experience. They should really buy something like Procedure Flow. But as I went through it and thought about it, it's like there was 3 of the same bad charge on there. They should have proactively been telling me, hey, you've never interacted with this company before. This is getting weird. Do you want these charges? Somebody should have called me or they should have texted me or something. And so, that uncompromising, like, let's do the right thing for the customer however we can. I like it.
I am going to say, unfortunately, it's already there. But I tell you what, in amongst all of the words that you kind of talked about there, that you used to describe uncompromising, there was one that shone through because it's in that sort of same vein. And that is the word conviction. Mm-hmm. Because uncompromising and conviction are sort of like, they're right. Bedfellows, I would say.
That's right.
You have this kind of conviction about wanting to do the right thing. And so conviction isn't on there. So you don't get out, you get a, yay.
All right, good.
So the second book, which was a follow-up to the Punk CX one, which was introduced this idea that experience is this multi-dimensional thing. It has a customer bit, it has an employee bit, it has a stakeholder bit, it has a societal kind of bit. And it's no longer sufficient to talk about just customer experience in isolation. You have to talk about the whole thing. And given that, I thought, well, actually, we talk about brand leadership, we talk about technological leadership, we talk about market leadership, but we don't talk about experience leadership, what that means. And so I've been asking people, who do you think is an experienced leader and why?
Originally, can I give you a little story on this one? I don't know how much time we have, but originally I liked Zappos. I really liked Tony Tsai and everything he was doing in Vegas. And the idea that he was selling customer service instead of shoes was a novel concept, I thought. And it meant that he could sell anything, and he did. He started selling clothing and then Amazon bought them because they were a potential threat for $1 billion. So what I loved about Zappos was that they were willing to do different things, hang out on the phone for however long it took, send people flowers, when they heard that something happened to their family and they couldn't return the shoes on time. I read a book called The Effortless Experience that changed my mind about that because it is largely impractical for most contact centers to have that kind of budget, or if it's not being mandated at an executive level, it's hard to maintain that level of customer service. Really, when customers call in, they want their problem solved very quickly. It was the premise of the book. It's a great book. Everyone should read it. And so how can you engineer?
Written by Matt Dixon, had him on the show recently.
Everyone should be working not just about the phone or the chat or the email, but the whole customer journey. You should be working on, what do people contact us about and how do we engineer the products and the apps and the website and everything so that they never have to contact us, right? And so in that vein, I used to I think the book uses Amazon as an example, and Amazon for a long time had a really great track record of executing on behalf of the customer. They have that thing called the empty customer chair in the boardroom, where they it's a visual reminder that they're there to represent, to do things on behalf of the customer. But I found recently Amazon, maybe because Bezos isn't there anymore or whatever, the stores.
He's taking up bodybuilding and wearing cowboy boots, apparently.
I guess so, but there's a lot of questions about transparency around the ratings, and I'm buying crappy things that just don't work for more than 3 days. And there's this kind of legitimacy thing around it where it's just like, it's not what it used to be, and you don't know whether it's coming from a third party or Amazon. So I think they have a little bit of work to do there. So I would have to say for my answer, and I apologize for the, getting around to it, but Chick-fil-A. So I travel for work, and just every time I go there, it's just consistently awesome. Like both the product and the food, it just tastes delicious. It's always perfect. The service is just so good. I took a couple of guys to the Vegas one. We'd worked all day, and we took a Uber down there, and we sat down at the table. And as we sat down, we had all of our stuff. And I said, you got to try the Chick-fil-A sauce. It's so amazing. Like, it's just really, really good. I don't know why. It just is. And another buddy of mine who'd been there before, he chimed in. He was like, yeah, you got to try it. So they motioned to the lady. They just said, hey, do you think we could get some Chick-fil-A sauce? And I mean, we're too lazy to get up and go to the counter and get it ourselves or whatever. And she comes over and literally dumps out like 20 packets of the sauce on the table. I was just like, are you kidding me? Do you know what I mean? Like, in what other fast food restaurant do they even come over, or do they give you that much extra? And yeah, anyway, you can tell that they're doing stuff behind the scenes to make that experience happen. I don't know all the secret sauces that they have, but it's worth noting, and I would call them leaders for sure.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And then, I've heard about sort of, whilst I've not eaten there, I've heard a lot about them and what they do. And it feels like they're getting a lot right, both outside the company with how they deliver, what they deliver to customers, but also you can't do that without having everything sorted on the inside either.
That's right. Who you hire, how you train them, all that stuff.
All of that sort of stuff. And so, okay, one final kind of question, because the world's a weird place, and there's a lot of kind of doom scrolling going on, and a lot of kind of like bad news stories. Well, that's just normal, really. But it feels like there's just like a lot of them right now, and a lot of doom scrolling going on. So I've been ending these podcasts just for a bit of fun by asking people to end us on a good news story. Mm-hmm. And to help with that, I've been asking them, can you tell me what is the most interesting or exciting or smile generating thing that you've seen in the last week?
Yeah, I had to think about this one a little bit. It's been rainy here, and there hasn't been a lot, interesting things going on. But when I thought about it for a minute, there was a news clip that went by just in the last couple of days of and I don't know the legitimacy of it totally, but there's this chimpanzee that steps out from a building, and it kind of looks up at the sky, and then his mouth falls open, and he's just like, and apparently this thing has been locked up for 25 years, maybe medical experiments or I don't know what. And it was his first time being outdoors and seeing the sky for the first time. So it makes you smile, right? It's like when somebody, they put the colorblind glasses on or something, and it's just very emotional. But for me, I've been hobby farming since COVID a lot. We have like chickens and just all that kind of stuff. And I have 7 kids. My youngest is 3 right now. So he's at home, and he comes out with me and does a lot of the chores with me and stuff. And I just, there is an awe and a wonder, if you kind of just, life is a miracle. Like if you just stop and either look up at the stars at night, or you just, I guess in the monkey's case, just the sky itself is blue. But for me, going out into the field and just kind of hearing all the chickens kind of eating grass and murmuring away and, talking all that. And, you just have to stop and enjoy it, smell the roses, and, just life is a miracle. So probably you have to get outside to do that. Our little square buildings, human buildings, are not, very awe-inspiring, but if you step out into nature and enjoy that's what's making me smile right now.
Nice. Thank you. So Micah, that's all I have today. I just want to say, thank you for your time. today. Congratulations on the work that you're doing, because I think it makes a difference. I think it's an important space, that whole agent experience, and particularly the in the moment thing, as we automate a lot of the simple stuff and we leave people to deal with more of the complicated, complex situations and emotive kind of situations that arise. Then any help that we can give them, to how I've been sort of describing it, is how do we operationalize excellence in the moment? I think that's a key sort of like fulcrum that merits a lot of attention. So I congratulate you on the work that you're doing and the success you're having. And just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your insight with us today. That's been great.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Adrian. I really like the premise of the show, and thank you for putting this on and having people talk about what they do.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.